So Callum, to start with, I'd like to begin with a quotation of you. So when investors come in and take control, they are removing the power from the very people that got to the business to where it's today. How to avoid that risk? It's probably one of the errors I've mentioned during my introduction, that this happens.
That sounds like something I would have said. So I think we come at raising finance from a slightly different area. Although we're Unity Group is a private equity company, myself and my business partner are both entrepreneurs, 20 years of starting, building, ultimately buying and selling businesses. So we have a slightly different view around funding. We see that there's a fundamental disconnect, if you will, between the money and the entrepreneurs that create the value in the world. If you look at the situation now, there's a lot of money being pumped into startups. Now startups are very cool and very glamorous, and governments love them and the media loves them. Generally speaking, you're safer putting money on in the casino. Startups have a hideous failure rate. Then there's a lot of money for big companies, sort of 100 million revenue and above. There's quite a lot of money available up there. But actually, the vast majority of the economy is small businesses that sit in the middle. So actually, the 4,000 merchants that you have on your platform represent that small business area. And it's incredibly neglected. It is nearly impossible when you're a small business owner to raise capital. And as that quote alludes, if you are lucky enough to find an investor that will invest in you, it normally comes with so many terms and conditions that for the entrepreneur, you're giving up control. And the thing about us entrepreneurs, we're not very good at being told what to do. We don't like giving up control. So it generally doesn't work out very well. So I think what's really interesting about what's going on at the moment is that there's a whole lot of innovation in this space. So our company is doing something called an agglomeration, which is where we create a publicly listed vehicle exclusively for the use of good small companies to swap their private stock for public stock. So they get all the advantages of being a big company PLC, but they keep full control. It's their brand, it's their culture, nothing changes. ICOs that we're talking about today are another fantastic way that allow entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. And I think it was interesting, at lunch today, I had a couple of investors that were asking me, and it was kind of like, I keep hearing ICOs are scams and all of this. And we generally, as a private equity company, we don't get involved with startups. To us, that's just too risky. What we're interested in is established businesses that have already figured out what problem that they're solving. And actually, if you can take a business like a Kinguin, like a well-established business that has a customer base, has a lot of transactions, and you can move them onto the blockchain where they've got those coins, they've already got a demand for that coin, and you can empower that. You can kind of put that on steroids and allow that business to grow, and therefore deliver so much more value to so many more people, to bring on more merchants, to serve more customers. That becomes really, really interesting, and that's that's why I'm here today. That's why we've got involved. But I think that's really the opportunity, and I think for investors that are thinking about whether they should get involved in this space, the trick is to look past the idea. There's lots of good ideas out there. But actually, ideas very rarely survive. And sometimes you can kind of add team to that. Okay, well, it's a good idea and it's a good team. Well, that's fantastic as well. But if you get the timing wrong, you can lose all your money on that. But the one thing that's constant is if the market has a demand. And if there's a market demand, then you can make money on that. And there's clear, huge demand in the esports area and the e-commerce area. And when you couple that demand, that proven traction, with an incredible team and a great idea, then you've got a really, really positive opportunity.
You mentioned that the idea is not the most important. Probably the biggest asset are people. And I'm wondering, have you ever seen a startup being able to compete with the biggest corporations, fighting for the people, being able to acquire the most important asset from the market?
Yeah, so it's one of the biggest challenges that small businesses face, but it's also, I think, one of the biggest opportunities that small businesses face. So small businesses always, we tend to have kind of a chip on our shoulder about, big companies have all these resources and they can attract great staff and things. But actually what the advantage that small businesses have is you create your own culture and you can be flexible. And one of the things, just as one example, I'm based in Singapore, and in Singapore, there's still, within big companies, there's still very much a culture of working long hours and, be the last person in the office to leave. And you've got this huge part of the economy, which is mums. So incredibly talented women that have got degrees, masters, 10 years of experience. They have kids. They're desperate to get back into the workforce. And the big companies are saying, yeah, that's great, come back. We start at 8 o'clock in the morning and you'll be expected to work till 9 o'clock at night. And these mums are saying, no, that just doesn't work for me. Whereas small businesses, we don't care what hours people work. We don't care where they work. Work from home, work at midnight. I don't care as long as the work gets done. And so actually, if you kind of take what's perceived as being a challenge and you can turn it into an opportunity, I think that's where small businesses have a huge opportunity. And I think I'd also add to that, I've written a couple of business books, and both of them are around this idea that we're moving from an era of competition into one of collaboration. And I think small businesses have this opportunity to collaborate with each other. And that's hugely threatening to big companies because big companies are terrible at collaborating. And they would love to collaborate with small businesses, but they don't know how to do it. And so small businesses collaborating together can really achieve incredible stuff.
At the beginning,
it's probably the longest answer to a really simple question. Sorry.
No, I believe that's your job to give the complex and not that simple answer to my simple questions. Just a small hint, because I'm really interested. Are you the last person that leaves the office in your company?
No. No, I mean, we run very, very flexible. And I guess it's just so I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. I really don't care where people do the work. And I know, actually we have a lot of our employees are remote workers. Some people work great in the morning. Some people work great at night. I don't care. I don't care if they come into the office. Just as long as the work gets done.
Okay, so last but not least, you said that the investors are kind of scared of startups because these people are, let's say, they are able to do unexpected things, but at the same time, the small business owner face their fears about IPO, about searching money, about getting funds. What are the fears?
So I think IPOs in particular used to be, when I was growing up, IPOs used to be the entrepreneur dream. It was like, you build a business, you take it public. The number of IPOs has halved in the last 20 years. It's just not that appealing anymore. There's a lot of secondary money out there, so there's a lot of other options. And B, it's brutal to go through the process of an IPO. It's, I think, was it JP Morgan in their marketing material for IPO said the average IPO costs $3.7 million. It takes 18 months. And for the last 12 months of that, your full management team will have to be 100% on the IPO. Well, what about running the business? There's a lot of other stuff going on. And so there's a lot of people out there that are trying to figure out better ways to do this, because also then you get public and suddenly you've got this very fundamental values shift between entrepreneurs, and this is something that we face because we take a lot of small businesses public through the agglomeration. Entrepreneurs, like people like Victor, spend all day, every day making decisions about how to create value for other people. And oftentimes there's no return on that value for months or years. And so all entrepreneurs are in that mindset. It's all, how do I create more value for my staff? How do I create more value for my teams? Suddenly you go public and you're in a world where traders will buy and sell your stock a dozen times in a day. And they'll spread false rumors on internet forums to make money. It's a completely different value system. So for entrepreneurs, that's really not that attractive. So any innovation that allows companies to take what they're doing and do more of it by giving them that liquidity and that investment without forcing them to go through the traditional models, which actually are not very entrepreneurial friendly, I'm a huge fan of.
And to sum up, the alternative model to IPO is agglomeration.
Well, that's just one alternative. I happen to think it's quite good. But no, I mean, there's lots of alternatives, and I think if you have an established business like Kinguin, if you've got people that are already doing, I think, 12,000 transactions a day on your site, something like an ICO is a phenomenal option in terms of allowing that growth. But for other companies, then yeah, it could be an agglomeration, it could be crowdfunding. I know we've got John Kim talking later. Yeah, lots of different options that weren't there 5 years or 10 years ago. So it's exciting.
A quick question. I promised the last one. What's the public level of ICO anxiety? I mean, we've seen a lot of scams, we've seen projects that failed, we've seen projects that really had no back office. How do you see the investor approach to the ICOs that are being created?
So I think we're still very much in a transition phase. I think a lot of people are still in kind of a what is this? And how do I get involved? I think it'll probably get worse before it gets better in terms of there's a lot of naive money coming into the marketplace. I think that the advice that we're only involved in one ICO, which is Kinguin, and interestingly, I've heard that from a couple of people today as well. So I think the approach that I'm telling people is find good businesses that already have an established model, and moving onto the blockchain makes complete sense, because it doesn't matter how good these ideas are, you're buying a currency, and if nobody else wants that currency, when you get back from holiday and you've got all that loose change, then you put it in a drawer and save it for later, and you then throw it away. That's kind of what a lot of these coins are going to be like. So if you're going to get involved in an ICO, you want a marketplace where there's already going to be a demand, or there's a guaranteed demand for your coins, because that way you can trade them later.
Thank you very much.